Perhaps you are hearing these words at a moment when your mind has grown tired. Too much information, too many thoughts that have not yet settled. Day after day moves so quickly that at times we forget what it feels like to simply rest within ourselves. Tonight, you do not need to understand anything more. You do not need to solve any great question. We are only slowing down together very slowly and listening to an ancient question older than every modern worry. If the Big Bang created everything, then what created the Big Bang? This is not a science lecture, nor is it a philosophical debate. It is a gentle journey where ideas about the universe, time, and nothingness are told like a whisper deep enough to touch you, soft enough to lull you. As you relax your body, let your mind open like the night sky. Questions about the origin of the universe will begin to reflect questions that are deeply human. Where do I come from? Why does anything exist? And does everything truly need a reason? As Carl Sagan once said, we are a way for the universe to know itself. If you feel your eyelids growing heavy, that is perfectly fine. This story does not need to be followed to the end. Just let it drift and allow sleep to find you naturally. There are nights when every sound has finally settled, when the outside world no longer asks anything of you, and a very old question quietly returns. Not a question about work nor about tomorrow, but something deeper, slower, and with no urgency to be answered at once. What was there before everything, before space where anything could have a place to be, before time where moments could pass, before even light, the thing that allows us to see, measure, and name the world? When modern people feel exhausted, it is often not from a lack of information, but from carrying too much inside the mind. We live amid constant currents of news, goals, worries, and expectations. Yet in those rare moments of stillness, when there is nothing left to do, the mind begins to ask questions that are very primal. Not to solve them, but to touch them. The Big Bang in textbooks is often told as a clear beginning, a moment, an event, a story with a starting point. But if you listen more carefully, the Big Bang is not really an answer. It is more like a question placed very far away at the edge of understanding. A question that science can approach, but has never truly stepped beyond. Science tells us that the universe was once extremely hot, extremely dense. That space itself expanded. That time began counting from a point where all equations grow tense. But when we ask what came before, science slows down. Not because it is weak, but because this question touches a boundary where language itself begins to fail. Stephen Hawking once wrote in A Brief History of Time, because there is a law, such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. But the nothing here is not a dead emptiness, not an absolute absence. It is something very different from what the human mind usually imagines. A state with no space to stand in, no time to wait, within no light to see by. A state where even the act of asking before or after becomes fragile. And perhaps what makes this question feel so gentle does not lie in its answer, but in the feeling of being allowed to pause. To acknowledge that there are beautiful limits to knowledge. That not everything needs to be grasped, analyzed, or controlled. Long before modern science appeared, philosophy lived alongside such questions. Unhurried, unforcing. Simply sitting with them like sitting beside a small fire in the night. Marcus Aurelius once reminded us in Meditations, look back over the past with its changing empires that rose and fell, and you can foresee the future too. But when we look farther still, before even the past, before the universe's own memory, we begin to notice something else. Perhaps not every question is meant to lead to a destination. Some questions exist to soften the mind by reminding us that we are not meant to carry the whole universe on our shoulders. Seen this way, the Big Bang is no longer a dramatic explosion. It becomes a very deep whisper, a reminder that existence does not need to justify itself with a clear cause. Perhaps the universe did not begin for a reason, but simply began. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, one must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star. Perhaps chaos is not something to fear. Perhaps it is within uncertainty, within unnamed regions, that all possibilities are preserved. The Big Bang may be a point where chaos and potential touch not to explain, but to open. And as we listen to this story at night very softly, very slowly, we may recognize something familiar. The question of the universe's origin reflects a deeply human one. Where do I come from? What is the meaning of existence? Do I need a perfect reason to be here at all? Carl Jung once wrote, Memories, dreams, reflections. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. But perhaps in this moment you do not need to awaken in any particular way. You do not need to look outward, nor dig inward. You only need to allow yourself to rest with the question. Let it pass through the mind like a very slow wave. No need to hold it. No need to follow it. If the Big Bang is where science begins telling the story of the universe, then the silence before the Big Bang is where that story gently settles. There is no pressure to understand, no obligation to conclude, only a space wide enough for you to breathe more lightly. And if while listening your eyelids close, that is perfectly fine. This question does not need to be carried into sleep. It has already done its work, opening a quiet space where the mind can let go and allowing the night to continue thinking on your behalf. After the first question has been gently set down, what was there before everything? The mind often feels the need to cling to a familiar image. What should a beginning look like? What should a moment like that resemble? And so, in the imagination of many, the Big Bang appears as a colossal explosion, a point of light flaring up in darkness, matter bursting outward in all directions like fireworks tearing open the first night of the year. But if we pause for a moment, slow our breath, and listen to this story in the rhythm of the universe rather than the rhythm of cinema, we begin to see that the Big Bang was not an explosion at all. There was no sound, no debris, no central point from which everything flew outward. What happened as science describes it was far gentler and far deeper. The Big Bang was the expansion of space-time itself. Space did not expand into something else. It expanded from within itself. Every distance lengthened. Every place moved away from every other place. Not because galaxies were fleeing a center, but because the very fabric in which they exist was stretching open. Here, there is no center, and there is no outside. This may sound abstract, yet it carries a strangely quiet comfort. If there is no center, then no place is more special than any other. Every point in the universe can be considered the center of expansion. Every position is valid. Every existence is being carried along by the same underlying motion. To help us picture this, science often turns to a simple metaphor, a balloon being inflated. Imagine small dots drawn on the surface of the balloon. As the balloon expands, the dots do not move across the surface, but the distance between them increases. No dot is the center of the surface. No dot experiences itself as still while the others rush away. All are simply drifting apart together evenly, slowly, in a motion that no single dot creates on its own. Albert Einstein, in developing general relativity, opened the door to thinking about the universe in this way, not as a static stage, but as a living structure capable of stretching, curving, and responding to the presence of energy and matter. In Relativity, the Special, and the General Theory, he wrote, "Space and time are not conditions under which we live, but modes by which we think." Perhaps this is why the Big Bang is so often misunderstood. The human mind is accustomed to thinking in terms of objects of motion within space, but here, space itself is what is moving. And that asks us to think more slowly, more deeply, and more humbly, loosening our grip on familiar images. When we release the idea of an explosion, the Big Bang begins to look less like a violent event and more like an opening, a quiet opening. There is no external moment from which to observe it. No place outside the universe from which the universe can be seen beginning. Everything happens from within existence itself. And here, philosophy steps in softly, not to argue, but to remain nearby. If there is no center, if there is no outside, then perhaps many of the questions we carry can also be gently set down. The question of where am I in the universe? The question of do I matter? In a universe without a center, no one is pushed to the edge. No one needs a perfect vantage point in order to exist. Martin Heidegger once wrote in Being and Time, "Being is the transcendence pure and simple, yet instead of trying to grasp this being, perhaps we only need to feel it as a subtle underlying motion like space expanding even when we do not sense it. Existence continues without requiring our witness. The universe does not need an observer to legitimize itself, and here healing quietly begins to appear, not as advice, but as release. If the Big Bang was not an explosion, then perhaps the beginning of everything did not need to be violent. Perhaps not every change must be dramatic. Perhaps the most important shifts always happen silently from the inside. Carl Jung spoke of the invisible movements of the human psyche, changes that do not occur at the surface of consciousness but in deeper layers. In The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, he wrote, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos, in all disorder, a secret order." The Big Bang, understood as the expansion of space-time, carries precisely this spirit. Not meaningless chaos, but an order unfolding before anyone could name it as order. Not a moment of destruction, but a process of coming into being, without witnesses, without sound, without initial light. And if we turn back to ourselves tonight, this may be true as well. The deepest changes within you do not arrive like explosions. They come as a very slow expansion. An inner space widening just enough for the breath to deepen, just enough for thoughts to settle. If you are listening to these words and feel everything beginning to drift, no longer clinging to images, no longer needing to understand each concept precisely, that is perfectly fine. The Big Bang, in the end, does not ask us to imagine it clearly. It only invites us to release the wrong images and to rest with a vast movement unfolding without our intervention. And from here, as the idea of an explosion dissolves, the story can continue to drift very gently toward the traces that expansion has left behind. The evidence still echoing in light, the motion still unfolding even as your eyes close and the night continues to expand on your behalf. When the image of an explosion has slowly dissolved, when we no longer try to picture the Big Bang as a dramatic moment of light and debris, another question appears slower, more grounded, and gentler still. Why does science believe the Big Bang actually happened? Not through blind faith, not through intuition, but through very quiet traces left behind in the motion of the universe itself. If you listen long enough, science does not speak in grand proclamations. It speaks through repeated observations, through patient numbers, through light that has traveled immense distances to reach the observer's eye. And within that patience, the story of the Big Bang gradually becomes convincing, not because it is loud, but because it is consistent. The first sign is something that sounds almost simple: the universe is expanding. Not somewhere far away, but right here within the underlying structure of all distances. When astronomers observe the sky, they notice that galaxies, vast islands of stars, are steadily moving away from one another. Not just a few galaxies, not in a single direction, but almost all of them in every direction. If translated into human experience, it would feel like standing still in a room and realizing that the walls are quietly drifting apart. No sound, no shaking. Yet the distances are changing. This was not discovered overnight. It emerged from years of observation, from delicate measurements of light. When light from distant galaxies finally reaches Earth, it carries a subtle message: its color has changed. The light has been stretched like a sound, growing lower as its source moves away. This phenomenon is called redshift. Not because the light grows tired, not because space wears it down, but because space itself expands along the light's entire journey. Each wave of light is stretched together with the fabric of space-time, and red, the color of longer wavelengths, becomes a whisper of distances growing larger. Science does not interpret this as a feeling. It measures it, it compares it, and it finds that the farther a galaxy is, the more its light is redshifted. From this steady relationship, a picture emerges not of a static universe, but of one that is continually opening. Edwin Hubble, who played a key role in this discovery, did not claim to have found the beginning of the universe. He simply reported a relationship: distance and recession speed are linked. Yet sometimes it is precisely such modest relationships that transform how humanity understands the world. And when we reverse this motion in imagination very gently, very slowly, we do not see galaxies colliding. We see distances shrinking. We see a universe that was once smaller, denser, hotter, not as an explosion within space, but as an initial state of space itself. Carl Sagan once wrote in Cosmos, "The universe is not required to be in perfect harmony with human ambition." Perhaps for this reason, science does not try to make the Big Bang comfortable or intuitive. It simply records what the universe is doing and accepts that the universe does not need to tell its story in a way that feels familiar. What matters is this: science does not believe in the Big Bang in an emotional sense. It accepts the Big Bang because no other model explains what we observe more effectively. The universe is expanding. Light is redshifted. Galaxies are moving apart in an orderly way. These are not speculations, they are happening right now, even as you listen to these words. And here, a quiet and beautiful intersection between science and philosophy appears. Science tells us the universe is not still. Philosophy has long been suspicious of permanence. Heraclitus once said, preserved only in fragments, no man ever steps in the same river twice. The universe is the same. No moment repeats itself. No distance remains fixed forever. And when we recognize this, the story of the Big Bang stops being a tale about a distant past. It becomes a story about motion that continues. For a tired human mind, there is a strange comfort in this realization. If the universe does not stand still, then feeling that everything is changing is not a personal failure. If galaxies can drift apart without purpose, then perhaps the distances in life do not always need to be closed. Marcus Aurelius once wrote in Meditations, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change." But instead of trying to observe, analyze, or keep up with every change, perhaps tonight you only need to allow yourself to drift with the underlying rhythm. Like light drifting through expanding space. Like thoughts passing through the mind and slowly fading. When science says the universe is expanding, it does not demand that we master the equations. It simply invites us to accept a very quiet truth. Things are moving apart not because of conflict, but because the foundation of existence itself is changing. And from here, the flow of the story can continue naturally toward the moments when light began to carry the universe's memory, ancient traces still echoing across the night sky. But right now, if you feel yourself drifting with no need to hold on further, that is already the rhythm the universe has been keeping for a very long time. As we grow accustomed to the idea that the universe is not still, that the distances between galaxies are quietly expanding, a deeper shift begins to take place not only within science, but within the way humanity imagines reality itself. This is no longer a story about measurements of light or dry numbers. It is the moment when humanity is compelled to admit the universe has a history. Before this realization, for a very long time, people lived with a familiar and comforting image, a static universe. A universe that had always been there, unchanged in its essence, without age, without memory. Stars could move, planets could revolve, but the stage itself remained unmoved. In such a universe, there was no before and no need for an after, only repetition. This idea was not only scientific, it was psychological. A static universe offered a sense of stability, like solid ground, that would not collapse beneath one's feet. If the universe did not change, then human existence could be placed within some eternal order. And then, very slowly, very quietly, that image began to crack. As astronomical observations grew more precise, as light from distant galaxies told the same story again and again that they were moving away from one another, science was forced to do something difficult: to let go of stillness. And letting go of a familiar idea is sometimes harder than accepting something entirely new. That historical moment did not arrive in a single day. It was the accumulation of data, doubts, and debates stretched across decades. But when the final picture emerged, it changed everything. The universe was no longer an unmoving backdrop. It was a process, an entity with a past, a present, and the possibility of having once been very different from what we now see. The Big Bang in this context ceased to be a strange hypothesis. It became a historical marker, not because it explains everything, but because it allows everything to be placed within a timeline. Before the Big Bang was not nothing in a simple sense, but a region where familiar human questions lose their footing. Albert Einstein once wrote, "The most incomprehensible thing about the universe is that it is comprehensible." Perhaps it is precisely this comprehensibility that made humanity willing to accept that the universe has a history, that what we see is not an eternal image, but a very thin slice of a story far longer than we can grasp. And when science accepted this, a subtle shift occurred within the collective mind. If the universe has a history, then it was once different. And if it was once different, then it can continue to change. There is no longer a fixed, perfect state to return to. No immutable original order. Philosophy had long lived with this idea that existence is not a state, but a process. Hannah Arendt once wrote, "In the human condition, the world itself is not human, and it does not become human because the human voice sounds in it. The universe does not carry history because humans need a story. It carries history because its very structure allows change to occur." Humanity arriving late is only beginning to listen. When the Big Bang was accepted as a scientific framework, what mattered was not the technical details. What mattered was that humanity for the first time accepted that everything has a once was. Stars have ages. Galaxies are born, mature, and transform. Even space and time are no longer static scenery, but entities with histories of their own. For a tired mind, this realization brings a strangely gentle comfort. If even the universe is not perfect, not fixed, not immutable, then perhaps our own changes, our fatigue, our moments of being lost and then finding a new rhythm are not abnormalities. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "In Meditations, loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." Seen as a dynamic entity, the universe no longer demands that we stand still to match it. It invites us to move along with it slowly, naturally, without rushing, without controlling. And from that historical moment onward, science learned a new kind of humility. The Big Bang is not a final answer. It is a point from which new questions emerge about origins, about time, about the limits of understanding. But the ability to ask those questions is itself a profound step. If the universe has a history, then its silence also has a history. The spaces between galaxies, the dark regions not yet illuminated, are no longer meaningless absences. They are part of an unfolding story even when no one is there to tell it. And here tonight, as you listen to these words, you do not need to follow that entire story. You only need to feel one gentle truth. Everything is flowing not toward chaos, but toward opening. When the Big Bang steps out of the role of a hypothesis and becomes a scientific framework, it does not close questions. It softens them. Because when we know that the universe has a history, we can allow ourselves to have one too, with unclear chapters, winding turns, and the necessary spaces of silence. And from here, the current can continue very softly toward the traces left behind by that primordial moment. Ancient light still arriving, carrying the memory of a universe once very different. But right now, if you feel yourself slowing into a gentle drift, that is the rhythm this story has been guiding you toward all along. When the idea of a dynamic universe has been gently set down, when we accept that space and time themselves have a history, the story does not end there. It quietly opens into another chapter, calmer, more delicate. Are there any traces of that primordial moment still present around us? Not as a memory retold, but as a lingering gaze, very distant, very ancient, yet still touching us in the night. And then science finds something so strange that at first it is mistaken for noise. A very faint signal arriving from every direction independent of time or place of observation. It carries no shape of stars, belongs to no particular galaxy. It feels like an even whisper spread across the entire sky. Later, we call it the cosmic microwave background, the CMB. If the Big Bang is a story, then the CMB is the universe's infant photograph. Not an image of a violent burst, but a picture of a phase when the universe had cooled just enough for light to move freely. Before that, the universe was too hot, too dense. Light was constantly colliding, scattering, unable to travel far. There was no image, no vision, only a thick sea of energy. Then came a very special moment, quiet, unmarked, when the universe expanded enough for particles to combine into atoms. And in that moment, light was released for the first time. It began a journey lasting billions of years, passing through a space that continued to expand, stretching along with it, cooling, reddening, until it finally touched the listening instruments of humanity. That light does not tell its story through clear images. It does not show us stars. It shows us temperature, uniformity. Tiny ripples, fragile differences are the traces of a universe that was once extremely hot and extremely dense. A universe that had not yet formed structure, yet already carried the first seeds of distinction. Carl Sagan once wrote in Cosmos, "If you wish to make an apple pie from scratch, you must first invent the universe." The CMB, in a sense, is that from scratch. Not to explain how the universe became complex, but to remind us that before all forms, there was a very simple state, almost uniform, almost silent, almost without distinction. And it is precisely this that carries a deeply healing feeling. In a world where everything is fragmented, where the mind is constantly pulled in many directions, the idea of a calm and uniform origin feels like a refuge, a place where difference did not yet need to justify itself, a place where existence did not yet need meaning. Science views the CMB as powerful evidence for the Big Bang because no other model explains such uniformity across the entire sky. But when we listen to this story at night, what matters is not persuasion. It is the feeling that the universe was once very close to absolute silence. Ludwig Wittgenstein once wrote in Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, "Whereof one cannot speak thereof, one must be silent." The CMB feels like that boundary. A place where scientific language still functions, yet has begun to touch silence. It does not tell us why the universe exists. It only tells us that there was a moment when everything was quiet enough for light to begin telling its story. And what is remarkable is this, that light is still here. It has not vanished. It does not belong to the past in the sense of something gone. It is touching your body right now, softly, evenly, without caring who you are, what you are thinking, or whether you are listening at all. The universe does not require your attention in order to keep whispering. If we place the CMB alongside human life, perhaps it resembles a very early memory, so early it cannot be named. A memory of simply being present before personality formed, before worry appeared. A memory without images, only a background feeling. Martin Heidegger spoke of thrownness, of being cast into existence without choice. But the CMB suggests something else, that before being thrown into complexity, existence was once very simple, and that simplicity has not been lost. It has only been covered over. When science calls the CMB the oldest light ever observed, it does not mean it is distant in a way we cannot touch. It is distant in time, but close in presence. It does not ask us to understand. It only asks us to remain still long enough to feel it. And from here, the flow can continue smoothly toward another realization that looking at the sky is not only looking outward, but looking backward in time. Every light carries a story older than itself, but right now, you do not need to follow that story to its end. If your eyelids are growing heavy, if your thoughts are beginning to dissolve, that is perfectly in tune with the rhythm of this chapter. Because the CMB is not something to be strained over. It is a reminder that there was once a moment when the universe simply existed without meaning, without purpose. And perhaps tonight you can allow yourself to return a little closer to that state. No need to remember, no need to understand. Just to be there very quietly within a stream of light that has traveled a very long way to arrive here, and is still gentle enough not to wake you from the sleep that is coming. When the universe's infant photograph has come into view, not through shapes, but through an ancient field of light spread everywhere, the story drifts onward into a gentle realization. Each time we look far away, we are looking into the past. Not in a nostalgic sense, but in a precise physical one. Light takes time to travel, and that time, whether short or long, always leaves a pause between an event and the act of seeing. In everyday life, we are used to thinking that seeing is instantaneous. But in the universe, there is no immediately. Every ray of light carries a journey. Light from the sun takes a little over 8 minutes to reach Earth. Light from a distant galaxy may have begun its journey before Earth even existed. When we look at the night sky, we are not seeing the universe's present. We are seeing fragments of the past arriving late. This changes the rhythm of looking. The sky is no longer a static picture. It becomes a living archive where each point of light is a slice of a different time. Closer means a nearer past. Farther means a deeper past. There is no single unified now out there. There are only moments that have already happened still on their way to us. And so each galaxy we see is a story that began long ago. There are galaxies whose light departed when the universe was still very young, before stars like the sun appeared, before heavy elements formed. When we look at them, we do not only see shape, we see age. We see youth, maturity, and sometimes decline all at once within a single frame. A telescope in this sense is not merely a tool for magnification. It is a machine for turning history backward. Each increase in sensitivity, each deeper look does not bring us closer to the universe's present. It carries us farther toward its origin. It teaches us how to look more slowly, because what matters most is never right in front of us. There is a very quiet healing in this realization. If light needs time to arrive, perhaps meaning does as well. Not every experience needs to be understood immediately. Not every feeling requires an instant explanation. Some things can only be seen when we step back or when we wait long enough. Marcel Proust once wrote in Search of Lost Time, "The real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. Looking far into the universe teaches us how to have those new eyes, not by moving faster, but by accepting delay. Light that arrives late is not a flaw. It is the condition that gives the story depth. Without delay, there is no history. When we observe a galaxy billions of light years away, we are looking at a time when the universe was different, hotter, denser, less structured. And when we place these slices together, we do not get a complete picture but a slow piece of music where the notes do not sound at the same moment. Each note arrives in its own time. Philosophy has long been sensitive to this. That time is not merely the linear flow of a clock but layered experience. Henri Bergson called it duration-lived time, which cannot be cut into isolated instants. And the night sky, in its quiet way, offers a similar lesson. Time is a depth, not a point. Albert Einstein, in a famous letter to the family of a friend, once wrote, "For us believing physicists, the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion. When we look at the universe, that illusion becomes clear. The past is not behind us. It is above us, shimmering, still arriving. And the present, if it exists at all, is a very thin moment where light has just reached our eyes." This also changes how we see ourselves. If each galaxy is a slice of time, then each human being is as well. Every person you meet is a history arriving late. What they say, who they are, carries the light of experiences that happened long before. Understanding this, we can be gentler with judgment, slower with conclusions. When telescopes are turned toward the sky, humanity does not only expand its vision, it learns patience. Patience with data, patience with ambiguity, patience with not seeing clearly right away. And that patience is the rhythm suited to the night. If you are listening to these words and feel your mind slowing down, that is not because you are losing focus. It is because you are synchronizing with a very ancient rhythm, the rhythm of light moving through space, the rhythm of stories arriving late. From here, the flow can continue unhurried toward even earlier stages of the universe times, when everything was so hot and dense that light could not yet move freely. But right now, you do not need to follow the next step. Let the sky do its work. Let the light continue its journey. And allow yourself to rest in the thought that not everything needs to arrive on time. Some things only need to arrive, and that is enough for you to close your eyes and let that very distant past keep whispering softly enough to carry you into sleep. When we have grown accustomed to seeing the universe as a sequence of memories arriving late, each galaxy, a slice of time, the flow of the story retreats even further into a phase where memory itself had no shape to be held. A time when, looking back, we no longer see stars, no stable light, no familiar structures, only heat density and unceasing motion. The early universe. There were no atoms then, no stable nuclei to hold electrons in place, no objects in the sense we understand them. Everything existed in a nearly pure state of energy, with fundamental particles flashing into existence and vanishing in an instant. There were no clear boundaries between one thing and another, no forms to recognize, only continuous transformation like a boiling ocean with no surface to be seen. If we try to imagine it, the imagination quickly grows tired. The human mind is accustomed to order to things that can be named. But the early universe did not need names. It existed before language, before differentiation, before the very idea of stability. And perhaps it is here that a deep parallel with inner life begins to reveal itself. There are phases in human life that are like this as well, hot, dense, chaotic. Moments when thoughts collide, when feelings have not yet crystallized into words, when everything moves too fast to grasp and feels too thick to breathe through. Science describes the early universe with severe numbers, immense temperatures, unimaginable densities, time measured in fractions of a second. Yet behind those descriptions lies a gentle idea. The absence of order does not mean the absence of meaning. It only means that order has not yet had time to form. Heraclitus, long before telescopes or particle accelerators, wrote, "Everything flows and nothing abides." In the early universe, this was not a metaphor. It was reality. Everything flowed. Nothing remained long enough to stand still. And yet within that flow, the first possibilities were preserved not by freezing them, but by allowing trial and error. There were no atoms, but there were particles. No structures, but there were interactions. No forms, but there were laws. And those laws, though veiled by chaos, were quietly at work. They did not impose order immediately. They waited. They waited for the universe to cool, for density to thin, for the conditions under which stability could become possible. There is a deep comfort in the way the universe did this. It did not rush. It did not try to become beautiful from the beginning. It allowed itself to be chaotic first. It allowed incomplete states to exist without erasing them. Carl Jung once wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, "In all chaos, there is a cosmos; in all disorder, a secret order." The early universe is a living testament to that line. Order is not the opposite of chaos. Order is born from passing through chaos, not from avoiding it. Fundamental particles collided, decayed, recombined, and through that process, more stable paths slowly emerged. If we look slowly enough, chaos is no longer frightening. It becomes a necessary phase. Like music before a melody appears when rhythm is present, but form has not yet settled. Like a quickened breath before it finds an even tempo. In the early universe, there was no self among particles. No particle occupied a central role. No component was privileged. Everything was equal in its transformation. And precisely because of that, the universe could explore countless possibilities before retaining those structures that endured. This reflects a deeply human truth. The phases in which we feel we are not yet anything are not wasted. They are where possibilities are being tested, not to select perfection, but to allow what fits to slowly emerge. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Placed beside the early universe, this line is no longer a personal exhortation. It becomes a foundational law of existence. Before stars, there was chaos. Before stable light, there was heat and motion. Before order, there was complete uncertainty. And if we return to the rhythm of the night, this may be the place where the voice should slow even further, because the early universe is not something to understand and finish. It is something to sit beside very quietly, very gently, to recognize that chaos does not need to be pushed away immediately. When science says that everything is constantly changing, it is not a warning, it is a description. The universe is not anxious about its lack of stability. It knows that stability only arrives after enough change has taken place. And perhaps tonight you can allow yourself to be like the universe at that stage. No need to be clear, no need to take shape, no need to know where you are going. Simply to exist within motion, trusting that what needs to crystallize will arrive in its own time. From here, the flow will continue naturally toward the moment when the universe cools enough for the first elements to form, when chaos begins to give way to structure. But for now, you do not need to go further. Let the heat, the density, and the chaos of the early universe do one gentle thing. Remind you that order never comes from avoiding chaos. It comes from moving through it slowly, patiently, without judgment. And if as you listen, your mind begins to dissolve, no longer trying to hold any shape at all that is entirely fitting. For before everything became clear, the universe was once like this too. And it continues very quietly until you close your eyes and allow the night to do the rest. When the primordial chaos has begun to settle, when the universe is no longer so hot that everything dissolves, the moment it forms, a very quiet transformation takes place. There is no blinding light, no marked instant, only a slight drop in temperature, a slight thinning of density. And within that fragile interval, the first elements appear. Hydrogen comes first. Very simple. One proton, one electron. No ornament, no complexity, just enough to exist. Then helium follows, a little heavier, a little more stable. For a very long time, these two elements are all the universe has. No iron, no carbon, no oxygen, none of the ingredients of life or memory, only the most basic building blocks. And yet there is a silent beauty in that simplicity. Science calls this phase Big Bang nucleosynthesis, the nuclear forging of a very young universe. In the first few fleeting minutes, the universe decides something that can never later be changed: the ratio between hydrogen and helium. About 3/4 hydrogen, nearly 1/4 helium, and only the faintest trace of other light elements. There is no guiding hand, no intention, only physical conditions, temperature, density, time, and they are enough to leave a permanent imprint. That imprint does not reside in a single object. It is everywhere, in stars, in clouds of gas, in your own body. Carl Sagan once wrote in Cosmos, "We are made of star stuff." But before being star stuff, everything was Big Bang stuff. The hydrogen within you was once the hydrogen of the early universe. The helium in Earth's atmosphere was formed when the universe had not yet produced a single star, not as metaphor, but as precise fact. You carry within you fossils of the beginning. Science sees these elemental ratios as powerful evidence, because wherever we look, near or far, ancient or modern, the numbers remain nearly unchanged. They are like the fingerprints of the Big Bang. Not a memory retold, but a memory preserved in the structure of matter itself. And there is a deep kind of healing in this, because it tells us that a beginning does not need to be complex in order to endure. The simplest things last the longest. Hydrogen, the lightest element, is also the most abundant. Simplicity is not discarded, it becomes the foundation. In human life, we often believe that value comes from complexity, from accumulation, refinement, construction. But the universe tells a different story, that some things are shaped very early, very simply and precisely. Because of that, they do not need to change. Ludwig Wittgenstein once wrote in Philosophical Investigations, "The aspects of things that are most important for us are hidden because of their simplicity and familiarity." Hydrogen and helium are like this: too familiar, too simple. So much so that we forget they are the most ancient witnesses of the universe. They were there before starlight, before galaxies, before anything that could be called a world. As the universe continued to cool, nucleosynthesis ended. Not because it failed, but because time ran out. Conditions were no longer right, and the universe accepted this. It did not force itself toward completion. It kept what had formed and waited hundreds of millions of years to continue the story along another path, the path of stars. There is a gentle rhythm in the way the universe works. It does not rush. It does not regret. It does not return to revise. It allows things to carry the imprint of the moment that gave birth to them. And that imprint, rather than becoming a burden, becomes the ground for all later possibilities. If we listen slowly enough, the hydrogen-helium ratio is not just a number. It is a whisper saying that all complexity begins from a very simple structure formed within a very brief window of time. Philosophy has long sensed this. Baruch Spinoza once wrote, "In ethics, nature does not work with an end in view." The universe did not create hydrogen and helium for life or for humanity. It simply followed its own laws. And precisely because there was no predetermined purpose, what emerged was free to be used in countless ways. Hydrogen fuels stars. Stars forge heavier elements. Heavier elements form planets. Planets give rise to life. Yet no step was planned. This brings a quiet ease. If even the universe did not begin with a complete blueprint, then perhaps we do not need to force ourselves to have answers too early. Perhaps being in a phase that feels simple, uncertain, or undefined is not a flaw at all. It may be the fingerprint of a necessary stage. When we say that hydrogen and helium are fossil evidence of the young universe, we are not speaking of something dead. A fossil here is not lifeless residue. It is enduring presence, a way for the past to remain gently within the present. From here, the flow of the story can continue naturally into the long, dark ages, when the universe held matter but had not yet ignited starlight. But right now, you do not need to go further. Notice your breathing. Notice the simplicity of this moment. Because like the young universe, sometimes simply existing in your most basic form is already enough. No meaning required, no goal needed. Just being there very still and allowing whatever needs to form to do so in its own time. When the first elements had appeared, when hydrogen and helium quietly spread through space like the earliest building blocks, the universe did not burst into light. Instead, it entered a long and deeply quiet phase, the Dark Ages. A span of time in which, looking outward, we see no stars, no galaxies, no points of light to hold on to. Only cold gas darkness and a waiting that stretched on for hundreds of millions of years. This is a part of the cosmic story that is often passed over because it offers no spectacular images. There is no light to capture, no obvious motion to narrate. Yet if we listen with the slow rhythm of the night, the Dark Ages reveal a different kind of beauty, the beauty of silent preparation. During this period, the universe already contained matter, but no sources of light. Hydrogen and helium existed as thin diffuse clouds drifting through an ever-expanding space. There were no nuclear reactions, no stars to burn fuel, no galaxies to gather light into form. Only darkness, not as absolute absence, but as an extended field of quiet. And it is within that quiet that what matters most is taking place. The gas clouds, though extremely diffuse, were not perfectly uniform. Tiny differences in density, faint ripples left over from the earliest moments, began to do their work. Gravity, slow and patient, drew matter towards slightly denser regions. There was no clear sign, no moment that could be called a beginning. Only a very gentle tendency repeated again and again, long enough for form to emerge. The Dark Ages were not a meaningless void. They were the universe's time of fermentation, like dough that needs silence to rise, like a seed that needs the darkness of soil to prepare for green shoots. The absence of light did not mean the absence of motion. It meant that motion was not yet ready to be seen. Perhaps this is why this period evokes something deeply familiar in human life. Phases when we feel ourselves in darkness, unclear, unanchored, unilluminated by achievement or recognition, are often judged as wasted time. But the universe tells a different story, that darkness can be where structure is forming. Soren Kierkegaard once wrote in The Concept of Anxiety, "Anxiety is the dizziness of freedom." In the universe's dark ages, there was a very primal kind of freedom, not shaped by light, not constrained by form. Matter had time to drift, to experiment, to gather without being forced to shine immediately. Diffuseness in this sense was a necessary condition. The universe did not rush to create stars. It allowed hundreds of millions of years to pass in darkness. And that rhythm carries a deep comfort. Not every phase needs immediate results. Some phases only need to exist very quietly so that invisible connections have time to form. Within that darkness, gas clouds slowly grew denser in certain regions. Gravity did not glow. It did not announce itself. It simply worked. And when enough matter gathered, when pressure and temperature rose, stars would appear, but that belongs to the next chapter. Here in the Dark Ages, the universe did not yet require light to have meaning. Martin Heidegger once wrote, "In Being and Time, the Nothing-Nothings." The phrase, abstract as it may seem, fits this phase uncannily well. The nothing of the Dark Ages is not emptiness. It is a form of presence that does not display itself, a background against which all possibilities remain open, unbound by images, unforced into explanation. If we allow ourselves to stay with this idea very gently, we may realize that darkness does not necessarily oppose life. It can be the condition that allows life to emerge at the right moment. Not every light needs to arrive immediately. Not every meaning needs to be illuminated early. The Dark Ages of the universe lasted an immense length of time by human standards, but for the universe, they were not a delay. They were a natural rhythm, and within that rhythm, the seeds of galaxies were quietly shaped not as clear structures, but as tendencies, as pathways that matter slowly grew accustomed to following. Carl Jung once wrote in Psychology and Alchemy, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." The universe in its own way also worked with darkness before creating light. It did not avoid it. It did not erase it. It allowed darkness to do its work, gathering, preparing, shaping. And only when conditions were right did light appear, not as a goal, but as a consequence. If you are listening to these words in the night, perhaps you too are in a dark age of your own. Unclear, unluminous, without signs that anything is forming. But the universe whispers something very gently. Silence is not the same as emptiness. In the darkness of the young universe, everything was still happening. So slowly, it could not be felt, yet steady enough not to be broken. And it is precisely this steadiness that becomes the foundation for light later on. From here, the flow of the story will continue naturally toward the moment when the first stars ignite, tearing through the long darkness. But for now, you do not need to go there. Allow yourself to remain in this chapter a little longer. Let darkness be not something to overcome, but something to rest within. Because before the universe learned how to shine, it learned how to be still. And sometimes that is all we need to give the seeds of something new enough, time to form very quietly within the gentle darkness of the night. After a very long darkness, when the universe had learned how to be still, to gather, and to wait, something entirely new finally occurred. Not suddenly, not loudly, but like a first breath after deep sleep, the first stars were born. They were nothing like the familiar stars we see in the night sky today. They were not small, not enduring, not settled into stable orbits lasting billions of years. The first generation of stars, often called Population 3, were enormous, intensely hot, and short-lived. They formed from primordial clouds made almost entirely of hydrogen and helium, without heavier elements to regulate their birth. And so they grew very quickly, they shone with extraordinary intensity, and they died very young. Yet it is precisely this fragility that carries a profound meaning. When one of these first stars ignited, it did more than produce light. It broke a silence that had lasted hundreds of millions of years. For the first time, light cut across the cosmic darkness, not as decoration, but as a sign the age of preparation was over. The universe began to move into a new chapter, a chapter of structure, of difference, of form. That light was not gentle. It was fierce. It ionized the surrounding gas. It transformed the environment it touched, but not to destroy, to clear a path. When light appeared, darkness did not vanish without purpose. It was reshaped. Regions that had once been indistinct gained boundaries. Spaces that had once been uniform began to differentiate. Carl Sagan once wrote in Cosmos, "The cosmos is within us. We are made of star stuff." But for there to be star stuff, the universe needed stars willing to burn themselves out, knowing they would not last. Those first stars were not made to endure. They were made to unlock a new possibility, the creation of heavy elements. Inside their blazing cores, hydrogen was fused into helium, helium into carbon, carbon into oxygen, then silicon, neon, and more complex elements. A chain of reactions impossible in the cold, early universe now became achievable through light, through heat, through the sacrifice of stars not meant to live long. When those stars ended their lives in violent explosions, they did not disappear. They scattered themselves into space. Heavy elements were released, spread outward, mixed into surrounding gas clouds. From that moment on, the universe was no longer a place of only two simple elements. It became richer, more diverse, and filled with the potential for complex structures. There is something deeply healing in this story when heard with the rhythm of night. The first stars did not live long, but they lived with immense significance. Not a meaning assigned by anyone else, but a meaning created by what they left behind. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." In the universe, this line is not merely metaphor. The first stars were born from chaos, from cold gas, from darkness, from the faintest density differences. And then they themselves became the source of a new order, not by remaining still, but by burning. Seen from far away, very far, the rhythm feels familiar. First things are often imperfect, not durable, not designed to last, but they open the path for what comes next. Without those short-lived first stars, there would be no planets, no complex chemistry, no life. No one here to tell this story. Martin Heidegger once wrote in poetry language, "Thought only a God can save us." Yet in the universe's story, that God does not arrive from outside. It emerges from natural processes themselves, where light appears at the right moment, then fades, leaving a foundation for what follows. There is no central command, no master plan, only a sequence of conditions met one after another. And here, the flow of the story slows once more. Because the first light, however brilliant, was never meant to dominate the stage. It appeared, did its work, and stepped aside. The universe did not cling. It did not regret. It moved on. If you turn back toward yourself, perhaps you have known moments like this too. Times when you burned brightly and briefly. Phases when you gave more than you kept, and then they passed. Yet what you left behind an influence, a shift, a new possibility continued to live on. Carl Jung once wrote in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, "I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become." The universe in its own way also chose to become more than it once was, not through intention, but through the natural unfolding of light and darkness. The first stars did not know they were laying the groundwork for later generations. That does not make their role any smaller. From here, the story will continue toward later stars, toward galaxies, toward ever larger structures. But right now, you do not need to go any farther. Let that first light settle. Let darkness no longer feel like something to fear. For the universe has shown us this light does not appear to erase darkness, but to transform it. And sometimes within that very transformation, the most important things are born quietly, deeply enough for you to close your eyes and allow sleep to arrive as the next gentle rhythm, natural and at peace. After the first light has appeared, after structures begin to form, and the universe learns how to tell its own story, through stars, through elements, through vast stretches of time, our contemplative journey slows and arrives at a very different boundary. Not a boundary of space, not a boundary of sight, but a boundary of understanding. There, science begins to fall silent. Not because it is wrong, but because its language can no longer go any farther. That place is called the singularity. A singularity is not an object, not a specific location in space. It is a state where density becomes infinite, where temperature exceeds every scale, where the familiar equations of physics lose their meaning. Not because they are incorrect, but because they were born to describe a world in which time and space already exist. And here both may not yet have come into being. When equations no longer function, science does not try to continue by unfounded imagination. It stops. And that stopping in the night and the quiet carries a strange kind of beauty. Stephen Hawking once wrote in A Brief History of Time, "Time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. This line is not meant to shock. It is a humble admission that perhaps time does not stretch infinitely backward. That perhaps the Big Bang was not only the beginning of matter and energy, but also the beginning of before and after themselves. If that is so, then the question, what was before the Big Bang, begins to grow fragile. Not because it is naive, but because it may be placed outside the context where it makes sense. Like asking what lies north of the North Pole, a question formed from habit but no longer aligned with the structure of reality. At the singularity, time may not flow. There is no current, no rhythm, no waiting. All the concepts the mind uses to arrange the world, cause and effect, before and after, may gently dissolve like a dream, fading the moment we wake. Immanuel Kant once wrote in Critique of Pure Reason, "Time is not an empirical concept. For Kant, time is not something we observe in the world, but the framework through which the mind experiences it. If that framework only has meaning once experience exists, then at the singularity where no experience yet exists, time itself may not have appeared." And here the story needs to slow even further. Because the silence of science at the singularity is not a failure. It is an honest sign. It says, I have gone as far as I can with the tools I have. And then it yields space to philosophy, to contemplation, to listening. Martin Heidegger once wrote in Being and Time, why are there beings at all instead of nothing? This question does not seek a specific cause. It does not demand a mechanism. It opens a space where human beings encounter existence itself without the mediation of formulas or graphs. The singularity in this sense is not only a physical concept, it is a symbol of limit, and a limit when seen with gentleness is not something to be overcome at all costs. It is a place where we learn how to stop. In modern life, we rarely allow ourselves to stop. The mind is accustomed to chasing causes, explanations, reasons, even for things that do not necessarily require answers. But the universe at the singularity seems to whisper something very different. There are questions that do not need answers in order to be meaningful. Ludwig Wittgenstein once wrote in Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, whereof one cannot speak thereof, one must be silent. This silence is not emptiness. It is a silence full of content, a quiet that allows you not to know everything, not to understand all the way through, not to hold the world tightly with the mind. And when we ask, could time itself have begun here, what matters is not the answer. It is the feeling this question creates a small, deep sensation that perhaps our existence is not suspended on an infinite chain of causes, but on a beginning that cannot be fully explained. This does not make the world meaningless. On the contrary, it softens it, makes it less mechanical, less tightly framed by certainty. Carl Jung once wrote in The Undiscovered Self, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. To accept that there are limits to understanding and to accept that we live within those limits is also a form of self-acceptance, not surrender but a release from the tension of needing to control everything. At the singularity, science does not speak further, but it does not disappear. It remains there like a companion who has walked with you a very long way, and now sits beside you gazing into the darkness without fear, without urgency. And in that darkness, you may allow your breath to slow, allow questions to exist without immediate answers. Allow the mind to stop running, because if time truly began with the Big Bang, then there is nothing before it to miss. And if there are questions that lie beyond time, you do not need to carry them into sleep. Let the singularity remain where it belongs as a necessary silence. Let not knowing become a safe space. And in that calm where science grows quiet, and philosophy whispers, you can close your eyes not to escape the world, but to rest within your very human limits, where peace does not come from answers, but from no longer needing to ask anything more. After the singularity where equations fall silent and time itself may have only just begun, the universe's story does not immediately become gentle. On the contrary, the moment it could exist at all, the universe seems to have passed through an episode so intense it resists imagination. Not as an explosion, not as blinding light, but as an extraordinarily rapid expansion so fast that every familiar human intuition becomes slow and inadequate. This moment is called cosmic inflation. Inflation did not last long. It unfolded over a span of time so brief it is almost impossible to picture shorter than the blink of a thought. Yet within that fragile instant, space-time swelled by factors that ordinary language cannot comfortably hold. A universe unimaginably small, saturated with energy, was suddenly stretched outward, not gradually, but like a breath held tight and then abruptly released. And then, almost immediately, everything softened again. What is strange is this: it is precisely that violent moment that left the universe with such a gentle appearance. Flat, uniform, calm on the largest scales. Like the surface of a lake long after a great wind has passed. Inflation was not proposed for its poetry, but out of necessity. The universe we observe today carries features that are difficult to explain through a simple Big Bang alone. Why is the universe so astonishingly flat? Why do regions vastly separated from one another share nearly the same temperature and properties as though they had once been in contact? Inflation answers with a bold idea. There was a time when everything was close enough to become alike before being stretched beyond mutual reach. There is a quiet beauty in this explanation. It resembles a memory of an original closeness when everything existed within a single small domain before distance itself emerged. And here the scientific story begins to touch human sensibility. For perhaps not only the universe, but human beings too experience moments of their own inflation. Times when an event, sudden, powerful, stretches the inner world beyond its familiar shape. Afterwards, the surface may look calm, even stable, yet underneath the structure has changed. Heraclitus once wrote, "No man ever steps in the same river twice. The river of the universe after inflation is no longer the river that came before, and neither are we after the moments of violent expansion in our own lives." Inflation helps us understand why the universe appears simple on large scales, but it also opens new questions, quieter, deeper ones. What triggered inflation? What kind of energy governed it? Why did it stop? And did it happen only once, or is it still happening somewhere beyond what we can see? Here science stands before another door left slightly ajar. No longer the absolute silence of the singularity, yet not enough light to see clearly. And within this half-light, philosophy begins to whisper. Soren Kierkegaard once wrote in Philosophical Fragments, "Life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced." Perhaps the universe is the same. Not every phase exists to be fully explained. Some exist to shape what follows and then recede. Inflation may have completed its role very early, leaving behind a universe wide enough, smooth enough, stable enough for the long story to unfold the story of stars, of elements of awareness. There is something gently healing in this thought. Not every violent moment must endure. Some turbulence exists only to make calm possible later. Some expansions last only an instant yet are enough to alter the entire structure of a life. When we look at the universe today, at the relatively even distribution of galaxies, at the nearly uniform cosmic microwave background, we are seeing the echo of a very early moment. A moment without which the world might never have become gentle enough to last. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, "One must still have chaos in oneself to be able to give birth to a dancing star." Inflation is chaos on a cosmic scale. And from that chaos, not immediately but long afterward, dancing stars emerged. Yet inflation does not grant complete reassurance. Some models suggest it may never have fully ended, that elsewhere, beyond the observable universe, other expansions may still be unfolding. This idea opens the concept of a multiverse in which our Big Bang is only one beginning among many. Here, the story is no longer purely scientific. It becomes a contemplation of our place. If our universe is just one bubble in a much larger sea, then our existence becomes both fragile and quietly extraordinary. Not extraordinary because we are central, but extraordinary because we happened. Inflation seen this way teaches a very soft lesson. Some things need not last long to matter. Some moments are brief, yet leave traces that endure for billions of years. And some questions do not need immediate answers because their openness allows thought to keep flowing. As the voice slows here, you do not need to follow every concept. You only need to feel the rhythm, a sudden expansion, then a settling, like a breath, like the mind when it stops trying to grasp everything at once. The universe once expanded in an instant, then continued to exist very slowly. So do you. And as this current gently closes, we may drift toward what comes next, where nothingness is no longer empty, but begins to vibrate ever so softly. Yet for now, you do not need to go any further. Let the universe keep its questions. Let your mind become flat again, even again. And in that calm, when everything feels wide enough, distant enough, safe enough, you can allow yourself to drift into sleep as the universe once drifted out of its first violent expansion and continued to exist for a very long time in silence. After the moment of inflation, when the universe expanded violently and then settled, leaving behind a surface that was flat and calm, our contemplative thread reaches a concept that seems simple at first, yet quietly unsettles every familiar intuition: nothingness. At first, hearing nothingness suggests emptiness, nothing at all, no matter, no light, no motion, an absolute absence. But as science moves deeper into the foundations of reality, that nothingness begins to change its tone. It is not as silent as we imagine. It vibrates very softly. In modern physics, the vacuum is not a dead void. Even when every particle is removed, every form of radiation switched off, space itself remains along with quantum fields. And these fields never stand still. They fluctuate. They breathe. They give rise to particle-antiparticle pairs for fleeting instants, only to let them vanish again. Not because anyone directs them, but because this is how nothingness exists. So nothing in physics is not the absence of everything. It is the lowest state of energy, a condition in which anything can occur, even if only for a moment. A quietly vibrating background where possibility is already present before it takes form. And here a gentle question arises: could the universe have been born from a fluctuation, not from an intention? Not from a plan, but from a tiny instability small enough not to require a cause in the usual sense. A fluctuation of the vacuum amplified by inflation may have become the entirety of space-time we now inhabit. A possibility that was allowed and not withdrawn. Philosophy has long touched this region, though, in a different language. In Being and Nothingness, Jean-Paul Sartre wrote, "Nothingness lies coiled in the heart of being like a worm." Nothingness for Sartre does not stand outside existence. It resides within it. It is the gap that allows freedom to appear, allows choice, allows difference. If everything were completely solid, there would be no room for change. And if nothingness were utterly empty, there would be nothing from which anything could arise. Reality, it seems, exists between these two poles, neither fully packed nor truly void. Science speaks of this in equations. Philosophy speaks in metaphor. Yet both meet in a shared intuition. Beginnings do not need noise. They can arrive as a vibration, nothing more. There is something quietly healing in this way of seeing, because it allows us to release the pressure of needing a reason for everything. Not every existence requires a cause in a strict chain of cause and effect. Some things only need to be allowed to happen. Ludwig Wittgenstein once wrote in Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus, "The world is everything that is the case." If what is the case already includes the fluctuations of nothingness, then the world does not begin with a command, but with a possibility. And that possibility does not need justification. When we hear about the quantum vacuum, about fluctuations that cannot be directly observed, they may feel distant or abstract. But try listening to them as a background rhythm, not loud, not clear, yet always present, like the heartbeat while we sleep, like the breath when we stop paying attention. And if the universe itself could arise from such a subtle fluctuation, then perhaps meaning too can arise from very small movements within the mind. A passing thought, an unnamed feeling, a quiet moment in which you are not trying to understand anything at all. Martin Heidegger once wrote in What is Metaphysics, "Why is there something rather than nothing?" This question does not seek a final answer. It opens a space of reflection where nothing is not treated as the enemy of something, but as the condition that allows something to appear. Nothingness seen this way is not frightening. It is a space for gentleness, a ground for all forms, a place where nothing needs to become anything, and precisely for that reason, anything can become. As this current joins what came before, we begin to sense a familiar rhythm. Inflation amplified a tiny instability. The vacuum provided the initial fluctuations. And from there, the universe may have begun not with thunder, but with the permission of nothingness. In your own life, there may be similar spaces. Moments of not knowing, moments of uncertainty, moments when it seems as though nothing is happening at all. But if nothingness is not empty, then these spaces may be preparing something not for a dramatic event, but for the quiet continuation of being. Here, the voice can slow even further. No more concepts are needed, no more questions. Only a very simple feeling you do not need to fill every empty space. Some spaces exist so that you can rest. If the universe could begin from a fluctuation, then your sleep too can arrive from a very gentle vibration. When the mind loosens its grip, stops searching, stops demanding answers, let nothingness do its work. Let the vacuum vibrate softly. And in that stillness, when nothing is no longer frightening but becomes a safe ground for every possibility, you can close your eyes and allow another small fluctuation to arise, the fluctuation of sleep itself, so light that no one needs to witness it yet, sufficient to carry you into a deep calm where nothing is required and everything is already all right. After nothingness has ceased to be understood as a dead void, after the vacuum has begun to vibrate ever so gently, and possibility has appeared within nothing itself, our line of contemplation continues to drift not forward but outward, widening to either side. Here, the Big Bang no longer stands alone like a single gate through which everything must pass. It begins to be seen as a chapter in a longer story, perhaps a very long one of the universe. And when the Big Bang is placed within that broader context, scenarios beyond it begin to take shape. Not loudly, not assertively, only as carefully posed possibilities emerging at the boundary between science and disciplined imagination. One such scenario is called the Big Bounce. According to this idea, the universe did not begin from an absolute point, but from a contraction. Before the Big Bang, there may have been another universe slowly collapsing, growing denser, hotter, until it could no longer continue inward. And at that threshold, instead of falling into infinity, it rebounded. Not like a collision, but like a breath reversing direction. Inward, then outward. In this picture, the Big Bang is not the beginning of everything, but a phase transition, a moment where the rhythm changes between two cycles of existence. There is a strange gentleness in this idea. It echoes rhythms we already know, day and night, inhaling and exhaling, sleeping and waking. No birth is entirely separate from an ending that came before it, and no ending is ever completely empty. As Friedrich Nietzsche wrote in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, all things are bound together, entwined, enamored. If the universe moves in cycles, then existence is not an arrow fired from nothingness, but a vast loop where every state is connected. The Big Bang loses the character of a solitary event and becomes a single beat in a long piece of music. But the Big Bounce is not the only possibility. When inflation is pushed to its logical extremes, another idea emerges: the multiverse. In some models, inflation does not end everywhere at once. In certain regions, it stops and forms universes like our own. In others, it continues endlessly, giving rise to more and more bubbles of spacetime. In this picture, our Big Bang is only one among many. Not special because it was first, not central, simply the one we happen to inhabit. This idea can be dizzying, and yet when listened to slowly, it carries a quiet comfort. For if there are many universes, then our existence is not burdened with representing everything. It only needs to be itself. Albert Camus once wrote in The Myth of Sisyphus, "The struggle itself is enough to fill a man's heart." In a multiverse, there is no single grand story that must be completed. Each universe is its own attempt at existing in its own way, and our presence, fragile, finite, does not need to be justified by uniqueness. The Big Bang, then, is no longer the first page of the cosmic book. It is a chapter being read from the inside. Before it, there may have been other chapters. After it, there may be many more. And we, like all characters in a story, lie fully only within our own chapter. Philosophy has long been familiar with this feeling that human beings do not stand at the beginning of history, nor at its end. We arrive midstream. We leave while the current keeps flowing. Hannah Arendt wrote in The Human Condition, "Men are not born in order to die, but in order to begin." Perhaps the universe is the same. It does not exist in order to reach a final ending, but to keep beginning in many ways, in many places, in many forms. Scenarios beyond the Big Bang are not meant to negate what science has already learned. They expand the space for humility. They remind us that even a very successful model may still be only a slice of a wider reality. And in that light, the question, why is there a Big Bang, begins to soften. Not because a new answer has been found, but because the pressure to have an answer fades. The Big Bang does not need to carry the entire meaning of existence on its shoulders. It only needs to be something that happened among countless things that could have happened. For a tired mind, this is good news. It means you do not have to stand before an absolute beginning, do not have to trace everything back to a final cause, do not have to carry the weight of the question, why is there everything at all? You can simply be here, in this chapter, in this moment. And as the stream of thought moves from vibrating nothingness through the Big Bounce, through the multiverse, one gentle realization emerges: meaning does not need to reside on the first page. It can live in any passage wherever you are reading. As the voice slows here, you do not need to decide which scenario is correct. You do not need to choose between the Big Bounce and the multiverse. You do not need to know how many chapters the universe contains. These scenarios are not offered for belief, but for opening how we view beginnings, opening how we view endings, and opening how we allow ourselves to rest between the two. The Big Bang perhaps is only a chapter, but tonight this chapter is enough. And when you close your eyes, you are not leaving the story. You are simply placing a bookmark very gently, allowing the universe to continue on your behalf in silence, in a slow rhythm where you do not need to know which chapter you are in and are still allowed to sleep in peace. And then, after passing through the deeper layers of science and philosophy, after touching the singularity, inflation, the trembling of nothingness, and scenarios that reach beyond the Big Bang, this current begins to slow, not because it has arrived somewhere, but because there is no longer any need to continue moving forward. Here, there is no grand conclusion laid out on the table. Only a very small question remains so light that if you try to hold it too tightly, it dissolves in your hands. Perhaps there is no first cause. For a very long time, humans have been accustomed to asking why. Why is there a universe? Why is there a Big Bang? Why is there something rather than nothing? Hidden within these questions is a quiet assumption that everything must have a reason, a beginning point, a foundation we can hold on to. Yet if the journeys we have just taken teach us anything, it may be this. Not every question fits the structure of reality. Some questions are born from human habits of thought useful in everyday life, but become fragile when placed before the universe itself. Perhaps the question is flawed from the way it is asked. When we ask about a first cause, we are assuming that existence is a sequence of events arranged along time, stretching backward toward an absolute beginning. But if time itself only began with the Big Bang, or with an even deeper phase transition, then before is not a hidden place waiting to be uncovered. It may not exist in the sense we are used to. Ludwig Wittgenstein once wrote in Philosophical Investigations, "A philosophical problem has the form, 'I don't know my way about.'" Perhaps our confusion about causation does not come from a lack of information, but from being lost within our own language. We try to use words like before, after cause, and purpose to describe a reality that may not be woven from those threads at all. If that is so, then letting go of the question is not a failure. It is an appropriate gesture. Perhaps the universe does not need a reason to exist. Not because it is meaningless, but because meaning does not necessarily arise from causation. A piece of music does not need a reason to sound. A dream does not need an explanation to touch emotion. And existence, perhaps, is the same, not in need of justification, only of being lived. Albert Camus once wrote in The Myth of Sisyphus, "The literal meaning of life is whatever you're doing that prevents you from killing yourself." Camus was not speaking of despair. He was pointing to a bare truth. Meaning is not a ready-made answer handed down by the universe, but something that emerges as we continue to live even without a final explanation. Here in this quiet closing moment that truth becomes gentle. There is no longer pressure to understand everything. No longer a burden to trace reality back to a first cause. There remains only the permission to be here in this moment without needing a reason. Martin Heidegger wrote, "In being and time being is the transcendence pure and simple. Existence exceeds every definition. It does not reside fully in cause nor entirely in purpose. It simply is, and that isness alone is deep enough for a lifetime of contemplation." If you are hearing these words at night when movement in the outer world has slowed, you may sense something very light. You do not need to carry this question into sleep. The question, "Why is there a universe?" does not need to be answered for you to rest. It can remain out there among the stars, within deep space, doing its own work, expanding perspective, and then gently settling. There is a quiet healing in accepting that not everything needs an absolute foundation. That existence itself may be a primordial fact unsupported by reason, and that human beings, as a very small part of that fact, do not need to prove their worth through a final cause. Hannah Arendt once wrote in The Human Condition, "The human condition is not the same as human nature. The condition of being human is to live among open questions, not to close them, but to dwell with them gently." And tonight, the remaining question, if there is one, is no longer, "Why is there a universe?" but "Can we rest without needing to know?" Here, the voice does not need to continue. It does not need to lead you into another chapter or open yet another possibility. The journeys already taken have completed their work, not to be remembered, but to open a space of quiet. You do not need to carry the Big Bang. You do not need to carry nothingness. You do not need to carry the multiverse or a first cause. All of these remain where they are, even when you are not paying attention. The universe does not require an observer to continue. It has been doing this for a very long time, long before questions, before language, before anyone was listening. And perhaps the gentlest thing this story can whisper is this: you do not need a reason to rest. Let the questions stay where they belong. Let the universe continue on your behalf. And in this pause, where no first cause is required, where no final answer is needed, you can close your eyes not to search for meaning, but to drift into the very natural peace of simply existing, for no reason at all. And like that, it is enough. And now, as this journey has gone far enough not to arrive at a final answer, but to slow every urge to understand, to grasp, to hold, perhaps it is time for you to carry nothing more. You do not need to remember the Big Bang. You do not need to remember nothingness or the scenarios of the universe. You do not need to keep any idea as a precious object stored in the mind. All of those reflections have finished their work. They have opened a space quiet and wide enough for sleep to enter. Here there is no conclusion, no message that must be carried into tomorrow, no question that still needs to be pursued. If the universe truly does not need a reason to exist, then tonight you do not need a reason to rest. You do not need to understand everything to be at peace. You do not need to answer the great questions to be allowed to let go. Let the stars continue to hang there, very distant, very silent, doing the work that is theirs. Let space continue to expand even if no one is watching. Let time continue to pass even if you are no longer keeping track of it, and you may allow yourself to stop. If your mind begins to drift, that is not missing anything. It is simply the moment when awareness steps aside and allows another rhythm to take over, slower, deeper, more natural. The voice may grow sparse now, not because the story has ended, but because no more words are needed. And in this very gentle stillness, when everything is quiet enough, far enough, light enough, you may close your eyes. Not to search for answers, only to rest in the simple fact of your own existence. The universe continues. You do not need to do anything at all.